What's up, y'all? Alex from PSYCHONAUT Visions signing in here. Today, this video topic will be about boundaries. Now, I'm going to talk about boundaries in relation to my childhood and me growing up with a narcissistic father. For those that don't know, that's what I've come to realize recently in the last couple of months through these long conversations I've been having with my brother, filtered through our childhood and who our father really is and what we've come to realize. And I might also go in more depth with boundaries in terms of philosophy and how you can possibly set up your own boundaries in your life and what boundaries mean or may entail and times when there are no boundaries. So recently, about a month or so ago, my brother and I had a conversation with my dad, and I've already covered much detail in my moving forward video of what's going on in my life, so just check it out. Moving forward, one of my recent videos about my dad. So we had this conversation, and in this conversation we basically confronted him about his emotional and verbal abuse towards us and my mom, and I don't think he's come to accept it. I don't think he's come to accept the way things have been going, and he's been trying to use manipulation tactics recently to get my dog back. Because the tricky thing about this situation is that we took away the dog from him because we were bringing over the dog about the last year or so to his place since my parents are divorced. And let's keep in mind that my mom pays all the vet bills. She basically takes care of the dog. So my dad was never really truly entitled to having the dog. And if you see, she's over here laying down. It was more of like a courtesy that Morgan and I, my brother Morgan, it was more of a courtesy that we would give my dad the dog. And he would also be somewhat demanding, I would say, asking for the dog on certain days. And if my brother said no, then he would get angry and upset about it. And let's keep in mind, like, he's a narcissist, so this is what he does. He gets angry if he doesn't get what he wants. He gives you the silent treatment and gets angry, whatever he does. And quite recently, my brother and I have been very firm with our boundaries with him, telling him and clarifying him multiple times why we don't want to see him or communicate with him. Which means that we took the dog with us because we don't want to have to give him the dog, and we don't want my mom to have to give him the dog because she faced this same abuse from him and she doesn't need any reason to see him. That's the whole reason why she divorced him in the first place. He's trying acts of desperation in order to get the dog back because that's all he cares about. He doesn't even quite care about my brother and I confronting him about this because he doesn't truly accept it. I don't know if he ever will and if he's actually heard us out or not. We've told him several times that, okay, like, we might do therapy with you and we'll let you know when we're ready, but as of right now, we don't want to talk to you or see you. It's too painful for us to see you right now. We are implying that we don't want him to be a part of our life right now, our lives. And I forgot where I was going on this thought train. Okay, so the other night, my dad sent a text to my mom saying something along the lines of, I'd like to have the dog tomorrow. I'm going to come pick her up because I'm having trouble finding a reason to stay. Now, this is very vague. Like, what does he mean by stay? You know, if you don't know anything about my situation, you might think that like stay means like, oh, like he's gonna move somewhere else, like not stay around here. What it seemed like he was implying was that he was going to commit suicide if he doesn't get the dog. And he texted my mom this, putting that on her conscience. Now, we were obviously concerned about this. We weren't 100% sure what to do because we don't want to give in to him. This is merely a manipulation tactic to get the dog back, to have some sense of control. Because ultimately, when we take the dog back, like, he could still be suicidal. So what we did was we called a suicide hotline. And we were on the phone with this guy for about an hour, and we basically came to the decision to be as direct as possible with him to see if he actually was suicidal. Because when he says he's having a hard time finding a reason to stay, like, we're not 100% certain what that means. So my mom asked him in a text message, completely ignoring what he said about the dog, which is good. So let's keep in mind that the week before, my dad went out of his way to ask my mom, even though my brother and I already told him we're keeping the dog, he went out of his way to ask her to give the dog to him. And she didn't respond to those text messages. So when she was responding to his text message about him saying that he's having a hard time finding a reason to stay, she said this. She said, I didn't respond to your previous text messages because I'd like to respect our son's wishes. Are you saying that you are going to commit suicide? And he never responded. And with him not responding, I feel like it just confirms that he was trying to manipulate my mom into giving him the dog. She knows, he knows that she is very empathetic and she's very nice, and that he was gonna basically squeeze her out of guilt to give him the dog. Now, I haven't contacted my dad about this, but obviously this text message that he sent her made me very upset. And yes, I'm still concerned for him, but at the same time, I need to do what's good for my own emotional health, my own mental health. I need to move on from this. I need to move on from my dad. If you have any sort of relationship with somebody that is kind of toxic, it's important to set boundaries in some type of way, because they could just keep milking you of all your energy. And if you never say no, you never stand up for yourself, they're just going to keep manipulating you. That's what my dad does. In my childhood, he made me feel fear of him, which is why I would listen to his every demand. And I think once he realized I wasn't as fearful of him anymore, he used other tactics, but he would still throw rage fits. He would play the victim, act as if nothing was his fault. And that's who he is. He's been like that for years and years, and when somebody's like that, they're not going to change. So just think about my story if you're listening this far, and related to your own life and boundaries that you want to set with people, whether that's your job, other relationships you have, or just like boundaries with yourself. And the thing about boundaries, and this is where I wanted to be a little bit more philosophical about this, topic is boundaries seem like they're limitless, especially if you've partaken on a psychedelic trip and your ego's dissolving and everything. Boundaries essentially dissolve, and there is no such thing as a straight line. But you do have to try your best to set some sort of boundary in your life, because that's a form of discipline. Because you can't just be going everywhere doing everything at all times. Sometimes you have to put in the work and the effort into something that you may not necessarily want to do. And I think that's just the way life is set up, and I think it's also really dependent on like politics too, and what's legal, what's not, because it kind of controls you in a sense of what you can and can't do, how everything is set up around society, what different occupations there are, and how money affects everything. I think when it comes to your own way of thinking, or just your belief system, I think in that sense you don't have to abide to or like conform to any set of boundaries. I think beliefs can be boundaryless and limitless. But nevertheless, it's still important to set some type of boundary in your life. I don't know what that might look like for you. I think psychedelics gave me the idea that, there are no boundaries and I can do whatever I want. But the more I think about it, the more I think that may not necessarily always be realistic. Sometimes you just have to live life as you wish when you can, if that makes any sense. Just keep moving forward towards some type of ambitious goal, because complacency ultimately leads to suffering, and then suffering leads to more complacency. And as humans, it seems like we chase this momentary pleasure in order to ease our suffering, because many of us don't know where exactly we're going. We may not necessarily have anything to work on. So it's tough. Luckily, I have some things to work on. My life is generally going in a good direction. Anything can change. You must understand that, but don't let that change the way you make decisions in the present day or the present moment. Anyways, I don't think I need to talk any further about this. I just want to share any updates about my life and what I'm thinking, and I hope you guys enjoyed. So, Alex from PSYCHONAUT Visions signing out.